Hey guys, welcome back. This is episode 32 of Real Estate Investing in New York with me, Christina Kremidas. And in this episode, we are going to be discussing how to make your offer more competitive in this competitive seller's market. So stay tuned. We're covering everything here. Welcome back, guys. Thanks for being here for another episode of Real Estate Investing in New York. This is a very amazing episode that we have planned for you guys. We have a mortgage lender with us named Mike Goldberg. Mike Goldberg is a loan officer at Roundpoint Mortgage, and he's going to be sharing with us tons of insights on how we can strengthen our offers in this competitive seller's market by leveraging the mortgage. So say hi to Mike Goldberg.
Hi, what's up?
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
We're so glad to have you.
Thank you so much. Joe Rogan, watch out. New podcast episodes dropping soon.
Yes, this was a long-awaited one. We had planned on doing this for months, I feel like.
I know.
But it's all the more relevant now, I think. I think it's become even more relevant since the beginning of the year when we were trying to get this in. We have so much ground to cover. I think that we can start with the easy stuff. Like there have been so many changes with the mortgage rates. What are the rates looking like? How have they changed year over year? What's the projection?
Yeah.
And the changes in jumbo loan sizes versus conventional loan sizes. So I guess that's a great place to get started.
Yeah, it's been a crazy couple of years, right? Since the start of COVID, a lot of things have changed in the industry, both from the lending side and the real estate side. And this year, 2022 has been no different. It's been extremely volatile, to say the least, right?
Mm-hmm.
In regards to interest rates, it's been a roller coaster ride for sure. With the Fed steadily increasing rates every time they announce something, that has an effect on the market. But in general, it's been a roller coaster for sure. And we've seen a steady increase over the last year and a half, about a year and a half, and it's definitely changed how we go about looking at interest rates, how we go about advising clients on when to lock, on advising clients on what type of programs are out there and what type of different rate options are out there. But it's been a fun one for sure. So, rates have been pretty crazy over the last year. I wrote down some statistics actually from the last meeting I had. So by the time this airs, I don't even know what it's going to be, but it'll give you an idea even over the long spectrum of actually what's been happening. So let me take a look. I wrote some notes down. Rates have been up. I have these notes from about a few days ago. So they're up a quarter since last week. They were up a half since the lowest levels in March. So in this month, following the onset of the Ukraine war. And they're up about 7/8 since February. They're up 1.25 since the beginning of 2022. And they're up 1.75 since the lows of last summer.
Wow.
And it's officially the sharpest increase we've had in interest rates in a decade.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it's been really interesting. And I know we've had this discussion with the team and specifically what this means for being a buyer and this agent in this market, excuse me. Number one, it means your purchasing power significantly decreases, right? Depending on what type of loan you're looking at, especially if you were on the edge of, let's say, your debt to income ratio on what you qualify for, what you can purchase at a 3.5% rate is not what you can purchase at a 4.5% rate.
Right.
Right. So you have to keep that in mind. It's something that I'm urging loan officers on my team and agents that I'm working with. If you have buyers that were on the fringe, you need to reevaluate. I'll have the loan officer reevaluate where they're at because you might not qualify for that same number anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And our audience understands debt to income ratio. We've covered all those basics. They're a pretty advanced audience, so we can get, if we need to get technical, we can get technical with them. So let's say I have clients right now that started their search with a 3.25 interest rate and are ready to close now with a 4.6% interest rate.
Yep.
And if you're a buyer today, obviously that feels probably traumatizing, first of all, to think you're going to pay this amount and find out what's the difference on that, maybe like $700 a month.
Yeah, depending on how much you're borrowing.
Depending on how much you're borrowing. Yeah. Right. So in this respect, if you're a buyer starting out your search, how can they protect themselves? Is there any way to protect themselves from this rising interest rate environment when it comes to wanting to keep that rate that you're quoting them today?
Sure. I think the best way to protect them against such a shock is to also review not only what a payment looks like, where the rate is today, but also go over what it would look like if it increased a quarter, if it increased 3/8. So at least there's no shock, because especially if they're in the beginning stages of starting to search, they may not have found the property right away. So there's some time that can elapse between today and when they find a place, which obviously means interest rates can change. So if you review what their payment looks like at 4.5 as well as 4.75 or 4.875, and tell them, this is what it could potentially go up to, they're not as shocked, and they're not blindsided by that increase.
So making sure that you have some wiggle room in your budget.
Exactly.
Like making sure that there's some wiggle room in your budget when you're looking for properties, with the understanding that the interest rate might jump a bit before you're ready to close, because you can't lock your rate until what? Until you're fully in contract, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's some technicalities on when you could technically do it when you have a full application, right? All you have to do is have the purchase price and a couple of other items that quote unquote make an official application.
And you need to have a property identified.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It can get very technical, but you obviously don't want to do that prematurely, right? Because if you lock too early, then you might end up paying extension fees, and that's a whole nother topic we can get into. But I think what would protect them most is just understanding the wiggle room and understanding that the range of where it could potentially fall. So I think that's the best way to handle it for sure.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I know that this seller's market has been wild.
Yeah,
like there are agents walking around saying this is the most competitive seller's market or the strongest seller's market that people have seen in their entire lifetime. Yeah. What I would love to make sure that we cover on this episode today is how can our buyers strengthen their offer? What are the different mortgage products they should be asking their lenders about? To give them more buying power? Is there a way, even though the rates are rising, is there a way to increase their buying power so they can increase that budget if they get into a bidding war? Or is there a way to kind of help in that respect, given different mortgage products available? And then the other topic too that we should get to, that I just don't want to forget about, which is why I'm telling you now, is can we discuss as well the appraisal, how the appraisal comes into the mix and different ways, and how the appraisal affects the overall transaction, and how considering maybe waiving an appraisal contingency can make them stronger, right?
Yeah, that's definitely a big topic.
Yeah.
You hit on a lot of different things. I think we should start with the initial process, right? Getting pre-approved. Not all pre-approvals are equal. What I mean by that is that if you have someone reputable, right, someone that the agents recognize, someone that the agents trust, if you have that person issuing your pre-approval, I think it means something. Also, making sure that loan officer takes the extra steps and really vets the client, right? Not just does a haphazard job of just here's your income, here's your credit, here's your assets, right? Really reviewing the credit report, really reviewing a full income review, taking a look at their assets, taking a look at if they have reserves, things like that, and doing a full review instead of just kind of checking all the boxes and sending out a letter, right? And then I think the number one thing is communication, right? If you show not only the buyer's agent, but the seller's agent, that you are there for open communication, I think that's going to help your chances, right? If your buyer has a good offer, but then the seller's agent tries to get in touch with the mortgage banker or the broker and can't get in touch with them, then that's not going to bode well, right? You know, they have to be able to reach out, because the business is complicated. Things happen. So many people need to do their job in order for you to get to the closing table. That, like, if a problem arises, the other side wants to know that they can reach out, right? Or that mortgage banker and that loan officer, is responsive.
Right.
So I think if you show everyone that you're there to help and that you're responsive, I think, you know, that could separate you from let's say an equal offer. Yeah. Right. You know, if the offers are equal, but you have a banker that they trust and that they can communicate with, I think you're going to win the deal.
Absolutely.
Or you have a better chance, right? I mean,
personally, we've submitted offers, and it's so competitive right now. I can't say it enough times. I feel like I've already said it a million times on this episode, but I think agents have like PTSD over how crazy competitive it's been overall. And yes, I've submitted offers, and giving the pre-approval from your bank with your name on it, I can honestly say I've had people be sellers on the seller side, sellers agents be more comfortable accepting that than a competitor with a no name.
They may not know.
Yeah,
of course.
Exactly, which they may not know. So this is important if you're a buyer listening to this, as well as if you're a seller listening to this.
Who are you going to accept, right?
Yes, who are you going to accept? So if you see a pre-approval letter coming from like those websites where like you don't really need to give all that much information in order to get a generic pre-qualification letter or something like that. As a buyer, you should know that your offer is not at all going to hold water against a person that's placing a similar offer with a pre-approval letter from a real bank.
I think with a name. Obviously, price usually wins out.
Oh, right? Yeah, which is why I said similar offer.
Exactly.
Like all things considered, things considered, right? Because you're right. Like very often, like we like to hope that we can massage things and craft a strong enough story that it's more than just the number for us, especially when a buyer is price averse or, you know, like when it comes to not being able to push the budget further. Yeah. But yes, ultimately it does sometimes come down to just a matter of numbers. It's just the price. But I do believe that your team behind you is very, very helpful for being able to get that offer accepted. So I think that's really good to know. And if you're a seller and you're presented with multiple offers, which pretty much every seller is now, and one of those offers is from
how do you choose
a website? Exactly. Yeah, like you know what you should take away from this episode is you have more questions to ask that buyer. Exactly. Like maybe it's going to be on you to follow up with those questions, you know, or if there's not an agent involved, but you definitely want to take note of that.
For sure. Yeah, the communication I think is really key.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, the worst thing you can do is like, you know, you get a call from a listing agent. They're like, "Oh, I'm calling you about, you know, this so-and-so buyer, Mr. Buyer," and you're like, "Who?" You know, that's not a good sign, right?
Yeah, it's true.
So I think you have to know your clients and know their situation and, you know, be able to communicate it well.
Right. Yeah. And a good loan officer is really your partner in the transaction, which it's really, they're on your team. They're your team member to get you from here to there. And
like your attorney, right?
Yeah.
I think also that's another point. Like, I think having your attorney ready to go when you're submitting that offer, right? I feel like is a big deal. I from what I've heard, obviously I'm not submitting offers on the loan side, but from what I've heard, you know, with you and other top agents, people are saying that, you know, have your attorney ready to go. Like from what I've heard is don't shop for a home, find a home you love, and then start looking for an attorney, because then you have to wait before you put in your offer and fill out your deal sheets and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
So once you have an accepted offer, we need to know on the spot.
Yeah. Have it ready to go, right? Like don't.
Yeah. So you need to know. So really, like offers were simpler back in the day. Like back several months ago, it was just you're submitting the price that you want to pay and like any, you know, unique stipulations, but that was really it. Like now it's like this is the price, super aggressive. We need a fair window of time to get into contract, or like I want to be reimbursed my due diligence expenses. And, if you can't pull the deal and take another buyer before we're in contract. And yes, I provide on behalf of my buyers when we're submitting an offer, I do provide their attorney information right there.
Yeah.
So like we are buttoned up. We are ready to go.
We have our team ready to go.
The lender I always mention.
Yeah.
We've closed dozens of deals.
Lender, attorney, you have everyone all set. Yeah. I think that makes a big difference. And to me, I'm putting myself in a seller's position. If I was a seller, I would rather take an offer like that than someone, even if it was a little bit better,
it's not worth it.
They don't have it all together, and then they may have other contingencies. I feel like it's also shedding a little light on what the transaction is going to be like in the future.
Yes.
Right? If you can't get yourself together just to put in an offer, what's it going to be like when you're in contract negotiations and then through your loan process and closing process? You're probably not going to be that organized throughout that either.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little foreshadowing, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a good point. You also mentioned something about appraisals. Are you seeing a lot of people waiving appraisal contingencies?
So it's become common now when it comes to if I'm representing a seller in a transaction, I'm going to look for an offer that has an appraisal contingency waived or a cash offer, just because right now the market's so competitive that you're likely going to get a cash offer put in front of you.
Interesting.
And when it comes to financing, one of the red flags with financing could be like the question marks, I guess, not a red flag, but it's what is the appraisal amount going to come out to? Yeah. And now with a bidding war scenario on almost every apartment, it's almost every deal that's going on is a little bit more expensive than the one prior in the building. So you're a little above the comps each time.
You're in a rising environment. Yeah.
So we haven't really seen appraisals coming in. I haven't had an issue with appraisals coming in low, there's still something a seller is very concerned about when you get an offer that has financing.
Because every time you're looking for the highest comp. You're looking to set the market every time.
Yeah. So it's like, is this appraisal going to come in at value?
Interesting.
Because if it doesn't come in at value, what does Mike tell us? Like, what does the buyer have to do?
You have a lot of flexibility in certain areas, right? In certain loan ranges, right? In conventional financing, specifically in conforming or anything to do with Fannie or Freddie, which is the agencies. For New York, since a high cost state, anything below 970,000, right, is considered. You can do a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan. You have more flexibility in those to put lower down payments. So what that could mean for a buyer is that, let's say they were planning on putting 30% down. If it comes in, let's say 5% below value, you have some room to increase the loan amount or to leave it at that same number, and it now just represents a higher loan to value. Does that make sense? I know it's a weird concept, but like
it is kind of a convoluted concept.
Yeah.
But it makes
But you have room to play with the mortgage.
If you're putting down over 20% to begin with. Yes.
Yeah, even so, because you can go to 95% financing, right? So if you were planning on putting 30, it comes back 5%. Now you're really borrowing 25% of the lower of the two. Remember, the bank uses the lower of the purchase price or the value. So if it comes in for less, now we're basing it off the lower number. But now that same loan amount represents a higher number.
Yes.
But we have that flexibility with that program. I know it's a strange concept, but we have that flexibility with that program to leave it there, to leave it at that loan to value. So instead of 70 loan to value, which is 30% down, it would now represent 25, but you're using the same amount of money.
You're using the same amount of money.
There's no difference in cost, right?
Well, this is why a seller likes to see more cash down when it comes to how the offer is structured, because if someone comes in saying they're only going to put down 10%, this is why a lot of buyers are losing out right now too, right? Yeah. So if you come in saying I'm going to put down 10%, then what really, how many options do you really have if the appraisal comes in low, right?
To go to 5%. You still have some wiggle room, but less.
Right, but
you do have some, yeah.
Which is a little bit of a it could be an issue if it comes in low. Do they want to put in the remainder? Like, because the other option that the buyer has
they can come up with the difference themselves.
They have to come up with the difference in cash.
Yeah. Are you seeing, because because I know I've heard of this before, like contingencies that are not waiving the appraisal contingency totally, but sort of like doing it in between.
That's what I was going to ask for you too. Also,
I've been seeing it.
Explain to us. I have seen
so it's really
have
more,
done it, but
it's more of a legal thing. So I don't want to I'm not giving legal advice. Waiving your contingency obviously comes with its risks. But what I've seen some attorneys and agents do with buyers that are in a really competitive space, they're saying, okay, we'll give you this number, right? We'll give you this offer, and we're not willing to completely waive the appraisal contingency, but we'll cover it up to a certain price, like 20% less than the purchase price.
Right. Let's give them an example. Like, let's say hypothetically the property's $1 million asking price, right?
Yeah.
So let's say we're going to put $1 million offer on the table.
So they would say, I've seen this happen where they'll cover up to, let's say 800,000, right? So if it comes in at 900, the buyer's still going to be responsible for covering that difference.
Because if the appraisal comes in low, that you could walk away from the deal, right?
But I'm saying in this case, what I've seen is that they're doing like an in-between. They're saying, okay, we're okay if it comes in 20% less. We'll cover it up to that point. But if it comes in, 40% less or even slightly above the 20%, then it's back up for negotiation. They can walk out with no penalty. Again, not legal advice, but this is what I've been seeing.
We've been seeing that.
Yeah.
We've been doing that.
Which is a good happy medium.
So if a property's priced at $1 million and you say, okay, I'm not willing to fully waive my appraisal contingency, but I'm willing to waive my appraisal contingency
10%.
down to $900,000,
Yes.
right? So if the property comes in and gets appraised for anywhere between $1 million and $900,000,
the buyer's on the hook.
I will pay the difference out of pocket. But if it's any more than that, I still am keeping my right to exercise my appraisal.
Yeah, that's the way I understand it. And I've been seeing it. I think it's a good way for people that are doing financing to still be competitive, because not everyone has cash. Not everyone has that kind of cash.
Yeah.
Not everyone is selling a property to buy a new one. So I think it's a good way, and it's a savvy way for an agent and an attorney to structure an offer where you can actually grab the deal, right? Instead of losing it out to a cash offer that may not be even as good. So you can come in with the high offer, but you have those contingencies. But it works for both sides. To me, that's what it seems like. Again, I'm not on that negotiation, but obviously being on the phone and being in the room with these conversations, and being involved in the process, I'm seeing different tactics, and I think this is a good one.
I completely agree.
Yeah, I think it's a fair one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for us, for me, the buyers that I work with obviously are all using financing, right? And we want to see these people have an opportunity to actually be competitive and win bids, and not continually lose out and get frustrated and just be disparaged and discouraged after a certain time, because it could happen. You see that, like the buyer fatigue, which is real in this market. Oh my gosh. Like, I'm getting a lot of it. A lot of my clients that have just been out there for months, placing bids, getting outbid, placing bids, getting outbid. It's tough.
It is really, really tough.
And that's what happens with the fatigue.
It's like, how much can you keep doing it? It really is. It really is. It's way worse than it's ever been in terms of buyers can repeatedly place an offer, not get it, place an offer, even be super competitive. You're bidding above ask.
Yeah. But
there are a lot of and when it comes to co-ops in Manhattan too, the co-ops, even in Brooklyn, they're not just looking for their price, but when it comes to, let's say you have two offers over the asking price at this point, they're looking for who's going to be a slam dunk with the co-op board. With the co-op board. So it sometimes even goes into a whole nother realm of like,
another layer of qualification.
Well, this person has $10 million in the bank, so obviously it's so easy. It's so easy to get the approval with the co-op board that, your offer was $100,000 higher, but you still don't have it. Sorry.
I wonder when they're going to change the laws on co-op boards having to tell you why they denied you.
I think we're all waiting anxiously for the time when they will have to abide by some kind of fair practice.
Yeah, some fair. Yeah, exactly.
Because it's I've seen a couple lately that
Because it seems like we all have to play fair,
everyone else has to play fair.
but then they don't have to.
It's like a closed community vibe.
And
Like gated community vibe.
And New York and co-ops are like so uniquely New York. I know there are other states that do have them, but I think the majority of them are in New York.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy because when we have out of town buyers that are coming in, and we're explaining to them what the co-op process is like,
They're like insulted.
Yeah.
They're like, excuse me.
Yeah. It's
like they're gonna interview me.
Oh.
Like I'm the one with the money.
And
like,
you can go through the whole process, and just at the very end, they're just
no reason.
sorry.
See you later.
You don't get any reimbursements or anything, right? Like,
no, you don't get any reimbursements. Like your application fee was sunk.
yeah.
Your attorney fee at
Appraisal.
that point could be sunk. Your appraisal fee could be sunk.
Yep. Inspection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And time,
Yeah,
which
time
is the worst.
most. Yeah, exactly. Like,
which is the worst.
we had the conversation before. Like, I wish they would just charge us more and just tell us up front. It's not us, I mean,
Exactly.
the buyer. Yeah. It's like,
I'm actually working on a co-op deal right now that reminds me of you because we were just talking about that, and we actually got an offer accepted on a co-op, and this board it's actually being sold by the building like a sponsor sale.
got it.
So I guess since they know that they would obviously sign a contract if they like the buyer, they're like, do the application process and the interview process first,
Interesting.
and then we'll sign
So they
a
still
contract.
had to go through the interview process, even though it was a sponsor sale.
Yeah, they're
Interesting.
doing it that way. Yeah, they're all
Yeah,
nuts.
it's-
Yeah, every single one's different. That's the thing. That
Yep.
you don't always know exactly how it's gonna.
So the Manhattan market has been more competitive or the same as Brooklyn? How do you see
I
it?
think Brooklyn has been more competitive
That's
overall.
crazy.
We just got in Tribeca, we just bid on and this was after a few failed attempts, but bid on a beautiful Tribeca loft, successfully got an offer accepted with $50,000 off the asking price.
Wow.
Granted, the apartment is listed for like $2.5 million, so like $50,000 off. It's not like you're getting 10% off of ask,
Yeah.
but it's definitely it's something. It felt like the biggest achievement ever in
To
a
get a
market
little
like
bit off,
this to get something under ask
But
and
Brooklyn,
secure
you're not
it.
seeing any of that.
No, Brooklyn, we're seeing hardly any chance of a discount. You're lucky if you're not in a bidding war in Brooklyn,
That's crazy.
especially very high
All parts of Brooklyn?
attention neighborhoods. Park Slope, all of Northwest Brooklyn is absolutely insane right now, down to like Windsor Terrace, Kensington. And then you have the private houses in South Brooklyn, which there's even more. It's just, it's nuts. And it's like the second something hits the market, it's already like allocated to the buyer who lost out in the last round. Like, it's like, good luck getting anything.
Are you seeing any buyer's remorse for people that moved to the suburbs during COVID that wanted more space, and now they're like, oh, now I can't stand my commute. I want the city again.
So I don't know. So I haven't had a direct conversation where it was clearly expressed as buyer's remorse, because I think a lot of people have a little too much pride to admit it.
Especially after you spend serious money.
Yeah, but
invested.
I do know people who are actively right now trying to Airbnb a property upstate,
because they want to get out.
Because they're now ready to be. It doesn't even matter if you want to come back at this point. You have to come back.
Oh yeah, a lot of places are.
A lot of places are like, you want this, you want this, you want to work here.
You have to come in.
We're coming back.
Yeah.
And what I think is crazy is it's like 3 days a week.
Yeah, it's hybrid now.
So it's like, it's cool that it's not 5 days a week. I get that.
Yeah, I think the days of like every company being 5 days a week are gone. Like that
I
work
think it
week is gone. Like the hybrid is here to stay. Like I don't think every company is going to be fully remote. And a lot of people are saying that, Manhattan will be empty, no one will be in Midtown. Like I don't think that's the case.
Manhattan's packed.
It's crazy. You can't even get an apartment, right? I mean, what's a rental like?
That's what I was going to say next too, because we have people that are just desperately exhausting themselves out of the buyer's market, out of the seller's market right now. So like they're attempting to buy and it hasn't broken their way. And they're like, I'll just rent.
But there's nothing.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, like you're in my thoughts and prayers. Like,
yeah, but I think it's worse.
It's worse. It's worse. It really is. Like the rental market right now is there's no inventory. everything is going to go over what the asking rent is most likely.
And rents are up. How do we know what the percentage is of from
I
last
don't,
year?
to be honest, rentals are not what I'm focused on, so I don't
I've just
know
been hearing
those
it.
percentages.
It's crazy though, right?
It's crazy. And if you ever thought you would find a no-fee apartment, like kiss that goodbye, because landlords have no reason to incentivize.
No.
And no broker fee is just an incentive. You know, they build the fee
They build it
into
your
the monthly
into your
rent.
rent,
You know,
right?
rent will be $200, $300 more expensive.
That's why I never
But it
understood the
feels good
regulation
because
they
you
were
have
trying
no-
to push.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
they still, no, there's no incentive. No incentives.
I didn't understand too much about the regulation. It just seemed like it was just another reason, another way, another thing that's going to push landlords to increase the price and just build it in.
That's what it's like. This is another topic. We could totally go there.
Yeah.
But it's like,
it's okay if we go off topic.
They put right, whatever.
Real estate podcast.
typical thing that we would do. So they passed these tenant protection laws, which we haven't done an episode about it actually on the podcast. It might be a good one. We don't necessarily focus much on renting on the podcast, but it wouldn't be a bad idea. So they passed these tenant protection laws to protect tenants, probably with the best of intentions, but it turns out that it hurts them in the long run.
Exactly.
It hurts them in the long run because they wanted to ban broker fees. So what's the landlord going to do? Like, if a landlord's running their property like a business, they're going to consider the expense.
They're going to pass it on to someone
else. They're going to need to increase the income to cover it. Yeah. Like, that's just how you run a business.
They're going to pass it on to someone else. They're not going to eat it.
Of course.
Whether it's the broker or the buyer.
Of course, but the renter is working out the same anyway because it would have been a fee, but now it's just in the rent. So it's kind of like everything shakes out the same.
Yeah.
Which is what you know, when you're working with a renter or client, you kind of explain that up front, but still, like, no one wants to pay the broker fee. Yeah. Like, it's not like they're trying to pay the broker fee, even if it means that they know the rent is more expensive on the other side.
Yeah.
It's like a principle thing. It's like, I'd just rather not give a fee away.
I know.
But yeah, and then the other thing about the Protection Act that hurts renters too is that landlords used to be able to collect multiple months rent up front if they were on the fence with a renter. So if a renter didn't have great credit, or if
I actually think that's the one thing that makes sense.
It makes sense. I think it's never nice when you tell someone they have to pay multiple months up front, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, now it's just a no. So what's worse? Now they can't find. There's nothing. They can't get anywhere.
Well, I think it had unintended consequences, right? Like, I think the intention was good, right? It tried to protect.
The intention was good.
Yeah, it tried to protect people from landlords that were like overzealous and it's like, oh, you have to give me a year's worth of rent to even get an apartment or something like that. Like, that's the way I look at it. Again, I'm not an agent, I don't do rentals or sales, right? But just from an outsider's perspective, it seemed like they had the right idea.
The right idea.
Yeah, the intentions were good, but I think what it hurt people is that people that needed to use that as leverage in order to get an apartment now can't.
Right. It's
which
like,
is
what
crazy.
Landlord is really like.
Can't believe I'm talking about rentals, but okay.
I know, now we're talking about renters. But the odds that a landlord is just gonna, for no reason, be like, pay me more up front when they have a great qualified applicant, it's not what really was happening. It was that you had these on the cusp renters that at least had a shot because a lot of people have cash. They have cash, but maybe they're not showing income. What if they run their own business? They're not showing income.
Exactly.
Or maybe they have plenty of money, but they're just not showing income. They're writing everything off, or they're
cash.
They're in an employment situation issue, or the credit isn't good. So they used to be able to pay up front. You could pay for the whole year up front. Everyone's happy. Yeah. But now they're just an automatic no. Like, they have no options anymore.
What about, I had a question going back to buyers.
Yeah.
Are people still writing letters?
Yeah, 100%.
Does it work?
It works.
Really?
It works.
Without giving away your secrets, what do you have them write? Like a heartfelt?
Yeah, it's sappy. Like, it's heartfelt. And you really, there's a few main points that you want to communicate in that letter. One of the things you want to communicate in the letter is employment stability. 100%. So we mention what they make in the letter. We mention what they do. And if there's been some longevity of employment there, we make sure that that's emphasized. Like, I've been in this industry for 15 years.
It's just stability, right?
Yeah. So you're showing stability. You're showing like dedication to something. Yeah. And you're emphasizing that there's current employment there. So like, that's one of the things you hit on. And then you like to talk about what stands out to you, like as the buyer, what stands out to you about not only this neighborhood, but also this particular building?
Got it.
Because you kind of want the seller to say, okay, maybe this person's actually serious. Like, I'm not going to accept an offer, waste some time, and have them walk away from the deal before we're in contract. You know, like, how do I know that you're not bidding on 100 other apartments right now, which a lot of buyers are doing?
Yeah.
So you want to look genuine, like you said before. You have to look, you have to show that you're genuine and real, and it also just shows too that you've gone through just yet another step, like another hoop you've already jumped through. Like, you're willing to put this page long letter together. It just shows more intention.
Got it.
Than just someone like, I'll email you.
Yeah, I was always
offer.
curious about it. Never really had a conversation about it, because I know it's been, I've heard about it, and I've heard people doing it. I wasn't sure if it actually still going on. So
to be honest, like, there are a lot of co-op buildings that require it. Like, they'll ask for a letter, like, as part of the application.
Really?
And a lot of brokers will require it as well. If I'm on the seller side, I actually won't request it, because it technically breaches fair housing guidelines. Like, what in that letter,
I see what you're saying,
is something you should really know about someone when choosing an apartment. Like, what about them is going to make you like
gray,
them?
Right?
It's very gray.
Yeah,
especially when there's like a picture included.
Forget it. Yeah.
That's a good
point.
Would not. Like, you're making subjective judgments when you should be making a judgment. If you're going to be complying with the law, you need to be just using numbers. Is this the price I want?
Not legal advice.
Is there a pre-approval letter? Right. But still, like, the co-ops want it, so the co-ops
they play by their own rules, right?
When I'm representing a buyer, I submit it every single time. Now, whether they use it and accept it, that's on them. You know, like, if they're gonna look just at the numbers, that's fine. But if not, I've provided the additional information. But yeah, I think it does beef up. I think it does definitely beef up an offer. But I do keep them, like, on the professional side.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to give them the whole life story.
Right. Yeah. Like, I don't necessarily. You don't need to get into that much personal information. But yeah, I mean, so when it comes to, let's say a buyer gets quoted a rate, and let's say they're not happy with the rate, like they inquired on a typical conventional mortgage or whatever it is, and they don't like the rate that they were quoted.
Yeah, I mean,
what are their options?
I implore all borrowers to shop. All right.
But even aside from shopping around, what are the other
products available?
Yeah,
I think maybe what you're getting at is the most common mortgage is a 30-year fixed, right? I think if you're looking at other options, you could always consider an ARM, right? An ARM is an adjustable rate mortgage.
Yes.
So essentially, an adjustable rate mortgage is where the loan is amortized, meaning it's paid to zero over the 30 years, but there's a shorter fixed period where the interest rate is fixed at a certain number, and it's at a lower number than usually the 30-year fixed.
It's a better interest rate.
Yeah. So an example would be, let's say, a 7-year ARM. It doesn't mean you're paying the mortgage off in 7 years. It means that the interest rate is fixed for 7 years, right? And depending on what other aspects of the loan there are, it could be more competitive and lower than the 30-year fixed. And you would look into this really depending on the client's personal situation, right? Especially a client that knows he or she is going to be there for a short amount of time. An ARM is something I would tell them to consider, right? An ARM is something I would say, look, if you know you're going to be there, if you know that this is a short-term investment for you, right? Meaning a short-term stay, it's going to be, you only plan on staying here 2 to 4 years. To take a 7-year ARM might be worth it for you, especially if there's significant savings compared to the 30-year fixed.
Right.
Right? Because then you're out before the 7 years. Before the 7 years, 7-year period is up, and you got to reap all the benefits of having a lower rate than the 30-year fixed.
So when it expires after 7 years, like when the rate resets after 7 years, is it always higher?
No, not necessarily.
It's market?
It's based on the market, on the index, right? And the index that the bank has chosen, and the index is determined by the market conditions. So that can change, but it could also go down. There are every arm has different caps, meaning how high, or floors on how low it can go. But if the market is better, it can adjust down. Right. So it's not always the fact that it adjusts up.
Would you like refinance after a 7-year arm?
It all depends. It all depends on I always look at it as like what their intentions are, right? On how long they're going to stay, but also where you have to consider a few things: where the market is comparatively where they closed, right? And what the cost is compared to what the savings is. Right. Because if it's a small savings and the cost of the refinance is too high, it doesn't make sense to refinance. Unless, of course, you just want that added security of having the 30-year fixed if it's close enough. So that could be a benefit to the borrower. So we look at refinancing specifically on a case-by-case basis. There has to be what's called a net tangible benefit to the borrower, right? It's illegal for a bank to just refinance you just because they want to refinance you. It's super illegal, right? They're just collecting fees.
I actually didn't even know that.
Yeah,
I thought you could refinance.
The bank wants to specifically see a net tangible benefit. They want it has to be a benefit to the borrower. So, I can't, if you have a 3% rate and rates are down to, 2.75, but the cost of the refinance is astronomical, they may not be a net tangible benefit for you to go through the whole process, right? Again, I'm just using random numbers. So we always look for the net tangible benefit to the borrower, and we'll go through each option for them, and ultimately they'll make the decision.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So there are other options to aside from the traditional 30-year fixed, for sure.
Yeah. And where do you see? Do you have a crystal ball? Where do you?
No, I left my crystal ball at home. No, I wish. Listen, I get this question all the time, and it's one of the few things. The truth is, I don't think anyone knows at this point. Anyone who tells you they know where the interest rates are going, what the market's going to look like, I think is full of it. I really do. I mean, you can take guesses, you can make educated guesses, but at the end of the day, are you that confident on where the short term, especially, like where do you think it's going to go next week, next month, 6 months? I think it's virtually impossible.
Right.
I think you're better off just knowing where the market is now, preparing your borrowers in a way that protects them, giving them the best product, because you can't worry about things you can't control, right? I mean, it's like you worrying about, where the purchase prices are. You don't control the market.
Right.
I don't control the interest rate market.
Right.
So I just have to give my clients the best information and give them the best advice that I can. Trying to predict them is you're going to end up putting your foot in your mouth. You go, interest rates are going to go down next month. Don't worry. You're going to look like an idiot at some point. Even if you're right once, twice, 3 times, eventually you're going to get it wrong. And it's just not, first of all, it's not smart to do, nor is it ethical at all.
Right.
Yeah. So I stay out of any price guessing or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course.
It's the best way.
Yeah.
For sure.
And then what about the potential buyers who are thinking to themselves right now, maybe I just want to wait.
No.
Like, let the dust settle. I understand that it's a competitive market to be engaging in right now, to be competing in right now. I do understand that. But if something hits the market that fits what you're looking for, would you say, go ahead and do it? Or do you think, what's the cost of waiting?
Yeah, funny that we've spoken about it before. I'm glad you brought it up. And I've done a video on it. I did a video on it last year, and I'm going to do an updated version on it. What's called the cost of waiting. The cost of waiting is not only one thing; it's multiple things. And when it really hurts clients is when it comes in twofold. It comes in the way of an increased purchase price, meaning the market continues to go up as far as values, and then the interest rates also rising at the same time. When you couple those together, it's a recipe for a disaster. Meaning, the real cost of waiting is not that your $1 million property is going to be now, 1.05 or 1.1, but that property that was 1.1 is now more expensive, and the money that you were going to borrow is not at 4.5, it's at 5.5, let's say, right? So it's the same money or more money is now more expensive to borrow. Right. So you pair those two things together, And it really makes a big difference. And the worst part is that apartment didn't get any nicer.
Right.
Right.
It's the
It's the
same
same
thing.
apartment. Like if you didn't like it at $1 million, you're not going to like it at 1.1
Right.
when rates are 4.5, and you're not going to like it. Excuse me. You're not going to like it when it's at 1.1 and rates are 5.5. It's the same apartment, and your payment can significantly go up. I know I did an example with you and another client that if you took the $1 million apartment,
Mhm.
right, in today and let's say you use an average rate of 4.5. And
Appreciation.
Then,
oh,
yeah,
interest.
4.5 interest rate.
Interest.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then let's just say you waited a year,
Mhm.
right? You say, I want to wait a year. And now that place is worth 5% more, which is, I think, a conservative increase in our market.
Especially. In
Yeah.
Florida.
I mean, I think nationally it's pretty fair, like 5
Mhm.
to 7%, right? But like New York is a whole different ball game. So let's just use that. If you went up to 5%, $1,050,000, and you're putting the same 20% down in both scenarios, for the scenario today would be at 4.5%, and then a year, let's say we're using 5.5. Again, I don't know if it's going to be 5.5, but let's just use it for illustration purposes. If you did a 5.5, and the payment on the 30-year fixed on your principal and interest goes up a little over $700 a month for the same apartment. You have to put more money down, right? You have to pay more per month, and when you look at that over 10 years, it's like an $80,000 difference.
Crazy.
Right? It's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not small peanuts. So
that's wild.
That's the real cost of waiting. I mean, there's a lot of times people call and I'm sure you have the same conversations. I want to buy, but I think I'm going to wait a year. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if something's going to significantly change in a year, let's just say you're expecting, I don't know, an inheritance, you're expecting some sort, I don't know, lawsuit, you're expecting a big jump in pay, right? That may be a good reason to wait, right? But if you just want to save a couple extra bucks, you're probably in a losing battle. I mean, the market is probably going to move faster than you can save.
Yeah.
Right. And then not to mention the cost of the money goes up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
that's the true cost of waiting.
That's a pretty powerful example.
I think it should create some urgency. Right. And I don't think everyone needs to buy now. Like, I don't want to make it seem like everyone should buy. Like, I don't think that's the case. I think you have to be emotionally ready, right? Not only financially, I think you have to be ready to make that move.
Right.
You know what I
have
mean?
me sitting here stressing that I have not. I've been meaning to
it's okay.
pick up a new investment property, and I haven't gotten around to it.
Investment properties, I think, are also different too, right? I think I look at them different personally. Like, I look at them, when you're buying your home, you're buying it for more than the numbers.
Oh yeah. Like you want it to be.
Yeah, it's like it's your home.
You need it to be yours.
Exactly, but I guess what you're saying, if I'm reading correctly, is the numbers are going to get harder and harder to justify.
It's only getting crazier from here. I need to.
So again, I don't think everyone needs to buy right away. Like, I don't want to come off like that, because I don't think that's the case. I think you have to be not only financially ready, but psychologically, emotionally ready to make that move. Right? You have to move into a new place. Maybe this is a place where you're raising your family. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But you have to be emotionally ready and responsible enough to take on that mortgage, right? Because it's not renting is a bit more simple than actually taking on that debt.
Less commitment.
Yeah, you're taking a 30-year commitment, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're signing a promissory note that says I promise to pay this back over the next 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big commitment in my eyes.
Right.
So I think it should be taken seriously. So that's the real cost of waiting. A lot of people get into that. Oh, I want to save more money. Well, if you only saved, like last year, you saved $30,000, great. But if your property, appreciates $60,000, if the properties are appraising $60,000 in your market, like, you're really behind the 8 ball.
Right.
Right. I know it's maybe not an apples to apples comparison, but
no, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
It is definitely true.
Yep, absolutely. So you got to be wary of that. And so I'm always saying, have that conversation either with yourself or with your family on when's the right time to start looking and to make this decision, because it may be worth moving that timeline a little bit closer, a little bit sooner than waiting a year. Maybe it's waiting 4 months rather than a year, because 4 months, yeah, you'll see increase in prices, but you won't see anything too drastic. In a year,
Right.
you really start to see it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 months, 4 months, relatively.
I mean,
Right,
I
in this
feel
market,
like
it's crazy, but
after seeing this market,
yeah,
I'm
but you
like,
know my
anything's
point.
possible.
Yeah, 3 months is a much shorter time than 3 or 4 months, is a much shorter time than a year.
Right.
Things can change a lot in a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's part of that whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, we've been telling if we do have purchases, luckily, all of our purchasers who were having a really tough time, we finally got them into something. We've had a few that have been quite challenging.
Yeah.
But it looks like we finally have them all into something at this point, as far as like our buyers. But when
you guys do a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When we do have someone who bows out of the market, we do still tell them, like, we're gonna still send you what's available, because maybe the inventory is slim right now, but when your place pops up, you still want to see it. You still want to obviously have the shot at it.
You got to be a part-time psychologist these days, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
With your clients,
you really pay. It's funny because that's what I always remind myself, and I like tell everyone on my team this too. It's just such an interesting thing because people will say things while you're working together, and people will do things, and you just need to I just constantly remind myself, like, I'm at work, but they're not at work.
It's true.
Like, this is not their work persona. Like, this is their out of work person. It's less like you do deal with a lot of like personal stuff, a lot of conversations that come up that you would never, like a coworker wouldn't,
of course,
be, sharing with you. It's like, this is what they're doing on their free time. Like this is, on Saturday, you're out, like you're spending a weekend with someone, so like you're going to hear everything because they're not at work. We could literally talk for hours.
Yeah, exactly.
We could talk for hours. I want to be cognizant of our listeners' time.
Almost an hour.
We're almost, I can't believe this is almost an hour long episode. So to follow up and kind of wrap it up, I guess this is the last topic that I do want to really cover, though, because a lot of times I speak with potential buyers and they have not yet gotten pre-approved, and that's really the first step in the purchase process, is getting the pre-approval.
Absolutely.
I think people are just concerned about, why would I get pre-approved if I don't have a property that I saw that I wanted yet?
Of course.
And just the hurdle of what's seen as a hurdle of getting pre-approved. But what I like to tell people is, once you see a property that you like, you need to be in a position to place that offer quickly, especially in a market like this. So you want the pre-approval letter in your back pocket, and maybe you can tell our listeners and our viewers something about what the process is like, sure, and something that might make it seem more like doable, or something like that.
I think the answer to the question would be twofold. Number one, going through the pre-approval process is not only important for having the physical letter so that you can submit offers. It's really an exercise that's going to help you and educate you as a buyer to not only know what you qualify for, but really what your budget is, like, and what your affordability is, what your comfort zone is. Just because you can qualify for $2 million doesn't mean you want to take that type of mortgage, right? You may be more comfortable with a payment associated around 1.2 or 800,000, whatever it is. So that exercise will really help narrow down what your monthly payment will be and what your obligation is going to be. So now you know what market to shop in, right? Not the opposite way around. You don't want to go look at a $2 million place and then find out what the payment is and freak out, right? That would be terrible. It'd be a waste of your own time, your own effort, and everyone else's. So I think that's an important part of the exercise, not only just having the physical letters, understanding where you stand, both on qualification and on comfort zone. So I think that's probably the most important part. The second part is, it's, with technology, it's super easy, right? We have online applications. You can upload all your documents. We get the pre-approval done within 24 hours. You'll have the letter. So it's a really, really easy process. It's one where you don't even have to come in. You can do it over the phone. You can do it online in a conversation with me. And if it's if it's something we need to get done quicker than 24 hours because you want to put an offer in, we get that done too. But it's very seamless, and it's really effortless to actually go through the process. But again, the more important part to me is really the education part, right? Explaining what options they have, but also where their comfort zone lies, what their closing costs will look like, what their down payment will look like, what to expect on a monthly basis, what other costs are associated with the loan. That to me is the part that's going to give them the confidence when they get out there with you. When they find a place, they can put in that offer with confidence and not have to worry about coming back to me and it all falling apart. So the advice I would have is that I would give, is make sure you have all your ducks in a row. Make sure you get that pre-approval in. You speak to your agent. You have your attorney lined up. Have all your ducks in a row so that when you find that that home you love, you put your best foot forward.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. And you can get the pre-approval letter, and it lasts a long time. Yeah,
I mean, we typically don't run a credit report is good for 120 days, right? So we won't need to run a new one for that. So typically it's good for at least about 120 days.
Yeah. So even if you're not planning on placing
and then renewing
immediately,
renewing it is not that hard.
Right.
It's sending some updated documents, having another conversation, making sure everything's the same. Again, it's that could be done same day.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not like they have to do an interview process all over again. It's
right.
It's updating a file is not bad.
Did you already tell us how long does it take, like if they've never spoken to you before, if they have a call scheduled with you today, how long until they can get that pre-approval letter? 24
hours. After they send in the necessary documents and I have all the information needed. So that's really, I'm going to work at your pace, right? I'm not the pushy type. I'm not the pushy salesperson type. I'm not the pushy, I don't want to make anyone do something they're not comfortable with, right? So if they want to have a conversation with me and then call me back next week and then send the documents in, that's fine. I'll start working on the file when you send in those documents and you express to me that this is something you really want to do and that you're interested in moving forward with. I don't want to be the person that's pushing you and make you feel uncomfortable, because that just never ends well.
But it's easy. It's like it takes a day if you're motivated.
Exactly. I mean, especially with everyone having their documents online these days, you get your W-2s, your pay stubs, your bank statements online. You send that to me within 24 hours. We're gonna have the pre-approval letter for you.
Right.
Yeah. Easy, seamless. Technology today has really, really changed.
Mike, thank you so much for being with us on this episode. Again, this is the second time that you've been on the show with us. I think I should be a regular. You're going to be a regular. So I've been referring my clients to you since I've been in this industry, like since I became a real estate agent.
Yeah.
And you've consistently done a phenomenal job for my clients, and the feedback is always amazing. And I'm so happy that you are able to make time for this to share what you know with our viewers and listeners.
Yep.
So yeah, you've been a consistent resource, and I really appreciate that.
It's a pleasure working with you. An honor to be on the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you
so much.